Hey y'all, hope you're doing well. I wanted to create this video for you because I receive a lot of questions about my vintage feed sack cloth swatches, especially from all of my needlepointing friends and friends who own needlepoint shops. So I thought that a video would be probably the best way for me to communicate with you all how I've, kind of stumbled into this aspect of selling vintage and antiques. So I really want to kind of give credit where credit is due. I have a very dear friend who is an antique dealer in New York. Her name is Paula Rubenstein. And Paula is truly a legend in the antiquing world and is widely known for her amazing inventory of antique and vintage textiles. And Paula has a brick and mortar shop in Manhattan, and I love to spend time with her, but also in her, what I call the back room of her shop where she keeps all of her textiles. And as I have over the years kind of played around with the different fabrics and things that she has in her back room, that sort of has, I guess, ignited an interest in me in vintage textiles. So a couple of years ago, Will and I were at a big flea market I think it was in Ohio, and I kept coming across dealers that were selling feed sack cloth sacks, and I had never seen anything like those in my life. And I was really kind of drawn to the textile. I really liked the patterns and the prints. I sort of liked the nubbiness of the fabric. I don't know, I just really connected with this particular textile. So I bought some feed sack cloth sacks. I had no idea what I was going to do with them, but that happens to me a lot when I'm outsourcing. I'll see things that I like and I really don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I go ahead and bring them home because I figure, inspiration will sort of hit me later. Okay, so what is feed sack cloth? I think that's a great question. So, in the early 1900s, when people would go to the dry goods store to buy their what we would call groceries, they were buying beans and rice and sugar and flour, that kind of thing, in sacks. They weren't using paper. Obviously, they weren't using plastic at the time. And the sacks had the word printed on the sack of what was inside the sack. So you maybe have seen kind of fabric that's white that has the word flour or sugar or rice kind of really faded. So that was how people bought their dry goods, kind of at the beginning of the 20th century. And as we were kind of moving closer toward the Depression, the companies that were manufacturing these feed sacks realized that women were taking the sacks apart and turning them into clothing, mainly children's clothing, because the sacks aren't huge, so mainly children's clothing, but also aprons. They were making curtains out of them, but they mainly realized that their sacks were being repurposed. And so they went, okay, wait a minute. Maybe if we made our fabric more visually appealing, then the dry goods stores would want to buy our particular sacks versus somebody else's sacks. So a lot of these manufacturing companies hired artists to create designs, and that fabric went into production. And so, leading into the Depression, feed sack cloth bags became very whimsical and very colorful so that they would be attractive to whoever was buying them and more useful as far as being repurposed. This production went on into the 30s and 40s and very, very early 1950s. And then we started having paper. And then, of course, later on we moved into plastic. So feed sack cloth is not real easy to find anymore. Obviously, it's very old. And because this cloth was used to, sell flour or sugar or beans or whatever, sometimes it's not in great condition. It's been used, it's been stained, maybe, it's been left, in a basement of some building for years, and maybe it's discolored or whatever it is. So finding really good quality, non-faded feed sack cloth is not necessarily a very easy thing to do. So I'm very grateful to the friends that I have that help me source. And I always count myself very fortunate when I'm able to find my own feed sack cloth on my own. Another one of my passions is needlepointing. And those of you all who needlepoint know that every canvas that you needlepoint has to be finished, meaning turned into what it's ultimately going to be, whether it's a Christmas tree ornament or a stocking, a pillow, eyeglasses case, whatever, your canvas is, it has to be finished into something. And usually that means that it's finished with some kind of fabric on the back. And so I thought about my needlepoint projects, and I looked at my feed sack cloth sacks and thought, okay, I think this may be like a marriage made in heaven. I love antique textiles. I like the idea of finishing my needlepoint projects with something that's really interesting and unique. I really like the idea of using textiles that have already been produced rather than, constantly buying new. I like the idea of recycling or upcycling. So I started having my needlepoint projects finished, my own personal projects finished with my feed sack cloth. And I have some really good friends that I needlepoint with, and I showed them a couple of my finished projects, and they were like, oh my gosh, Mary, this is such a good idea. It's so cute. You need to sell this, like you're selling all your other antiques and vintage. And I was like, oh, well, ding, ding, ding. Maybe that is exactly what I need to do. So I really started to, kind of more aggressively look for vintage, authentic vintage feed sack cloth fabric, whether it was just in a piece or it was still in the sack format. It didn't matter to me. I began to really source it. I have some friends who are antique dealers in New England who also were looking for me. I can't find this material in Texas. I definitely have to get it, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, the East Coast. And so I have friends who help me source it. And I have amassed a really amazing inventory of some of the cutest patterns you've ever seen. And I am now making them available to all my needlepointing friends. Whether you are just a regular person who's needlepointing, or you own a shop and you would like to look at these fabrics for your own customers, they're available to the trade and also to the public. I have cut the sacks up into basically 8x8 squares, which is definitely big enough to finish an ornament or a small canvas of that size. If you have a really good finisher, you could probably even get 2 finishes out of 1 piece of fabric. But all of the inventory that I have is available on my website, which I will share with you all in just a minute. Okay, so right here at the bottom of your screen, I have posted a link to how you can shop for my feed sack cloth swatches, but you can also find my swatches in a variety of other ways. You can find in my Instagram profile, in my bio, there is a link to my Linktree account, and there you will see a button so that you can buy my feed sack cloth swatches. You can also go to thecuriouscowgirl.com and click on my online Living with Vintage shop, and you will see a link there so that you can shop. So there's a multiple number of ways that you can shop my 1930s vintage authentic feed sack cloth swatches. So I encourage you to go online and check out what I have in inventory. My inventory is always changing, because sometimes I only have one sack of one particular design, and once it's gone, it's gone. So definitely go check out what I have. Check back often. I'm receiving new inventory all the time, and as fast as I can get it cut and listed on my website, it's available to you all. And I encourage you to think about using this cloth to finish your needlepoint projects. Again, I think it makes your all of your hard effort in needlepointing something beautiful even more special. I like the idea of preserving what I think is kind of a piece of American history, and frankly, just making your projects as uniquely you as possible. So y'all enjoy shopping.